What's going on, everybody? Martha Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. And today, folks, we are looking at Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 89. And today, folks, we are looking at part 4 to Silver Sable. Today, we see that Spider-Man is going to be unmasked once again. This time, Silver Sable is going to find out well, we'll see for ourselves whether she finds out the true identity of Spider-Man. Is she going to get his name? That's what we have to worry about today, folks. As always, before we get started, we got to give credit where credit is due. This issue is brought to you by Brian Michael Bendis, who wrote this issue. We have Mark Bagley on the penciling, Scott Hanna on the inking, Justin Ponzer on the coloring, and Chris Elapoulos on the lettering page. So let's go ahead now and get started. So let's go ahead now and see exactly what this story is all about. Well, we're going to start this issue out with a little origin story of Silver Sable, and it's kind of like a picture book in a way, the way this issue starts out, because it has these big bold letters here, and the writing is very different here. It's not like a usual comic book. And so we learn here at the very beginning of this issue that Silver, that's her name, is Silver Sable, but her name is actually Silver, and she was an angry little girl, and there's a reason why. It's because her father was never around to take care of her, and her mom was a drunk, and her mom would be mean to her for no apparent reason, and so she took out all of her anger, all of her rage at school by getting into fights. She had a very troubled life, as we soon find out. So later on in her teen years, we find out here that she's going to be approached by this bald man. He comes up to her door, tells her that her father is dying, and he's on his deathbed, and his one wish is to see his daughter. And so she goes and sees her father. She doesn't really want to see him because she's still angry at him for never coming home. But when she goes to her father, she's going to see her father laying on his deathbed, and she becomes overwhelmed with emotion here. And her father is going to tell her and reveal something to her that she's never known about him, and that is that he tracked down war criminals, Nazis, back in the day, and that's why he was never at home. He was always tracking down people who tried to sneak away from their crimes. He would go to the jungles of Brazil, the streets of Europe, and even to the heartland of the United States. And so while he's telling his daughter about this, he's like, he really wants her to understand that he loves her. He wanted to be there for his daughter, but he had a job to do. And so he's like pleading with the angels who are going to take him to heaven, but he wants to stay on earth, but he dies. And so she gets very emotional, and because of the death of her father, she turns to her father's friends and asks them how she can get into this business of tracking down criminals who try to escape their crimes. She wants to do her father's work, and they all tell her that it's not going to be easy, but they're like, please just teach me how to do it. And so now we're in present day, and we see exactly what motivates Silver Sable. She's always been doing this kind of work because of her father's death. And she's now delivering the body of Spider-Man to Mr. Roxxon, who has been wanting to see Spider-Man for quite some time, and we're going to find out exactly why. They unmask Spider-Man. They think he is, so young, and he really is. He's just a high school student. They wake him up here, and we see that Mr. Roxxon is going to then talk with Peter. They don't know his name yet. And we find out here that Mr. Roxxon is wanting to see Spider-Man for a purpose, and that is that Spider-Man has indirectly helped Mr. Roxxon more than once take down these supervillains. And Peter is like, I don't even know who you are, okay? I don't know how you or tracked me down and why Silver Sable tracked me down, but please just let me go. Let me out of here. So Mr. Roxxon shows Peter some proof of how he took down this one guy right here, and then he took down Omega Red. And Peter's like, okay, yeah, that was me, but I was just swinging through town and I saw these lunatics out and about causing harm, and so I took them down. And so Mr. Roxon's like, oh, so that had nothing to do with me? And he's like, yes. How many times do I have to tell you? And he said, please put my mask back on. And so Mr. Roxon then turns to Silver Sable and says, well, what do you think? What should we do? Silver Sable says we need to get his prints. So Peter is left with no choice. They try to get his fingerprints here so that they can identify him. And while this is taking place at Nick Fury's place, it's the home of the Ultimates, his security is going to tell Nick Fury that someone is trying to do an unauthorized fingerprint match test. Nick Fury asks, whose prints? And they say, Peter Parker. And so we see that Nick Fury is like, okay, triangulate the location and send a stealth recon team. I want an on-site report, but do not engage. So while all this is taking place, we see that Silver Sable's men are going to tell Silver Sable, hey, someone is trying to hack into here so that we can't identify Spider-Man. She throws down that device, and while all this is taking place, Silver Sable's like, we got to get out of here because you must be working for S.H.I.E.L.D., Mr. Roxon. Mr. Roxon's like, denies it all here. Here's a little bit of an origin story of Mr. Roxon. He was a rich young man. His father, his grandfather, and even his great-grandfather have always been rich. He's never had to worry about money. And at his father's death, he inherited the Roxon Corporation. And so we see here that Donald Roxon took over his dad's duties, and he really never wanted to do this kind of job. He always just wanted to be on his boat. But now we're back in the present day, and while all this is taking place, Silver Sable's men's like, guys, and then a huge explosion takes place here. Someone has attacked Roxon for some reason. I don't think it's S.H.I.E.L.D. though. So someone is trying to kill Mr. Roxon. Mr. Roxon is shown hurtling out of the window, and Spider-Man comes to the rescue here, saves Mr. Roxon, and he's going to return back to the top of the building. Silver Sable's men thinks that Spider-Man was responsible for the death of this one agent. But it's not S.H.I.E.L.D., it's not Spider-Man that's responsible, it's someone else, and this guy, whoever it is throwing these grenades. Spider-Man avoids the grenade. They start firing at this person. Someone is doing it, and we're going to find out who it is, and it is the Vulture, folks. The Vulture makes his first appearance in this issue, folks. Here we have it, folks. The first appearance of the Ultimate Vulture. So that's going to be pretty cool. So we're going to pick up next issue as Spider-Man's going to be fighting this version of the Vulture. And so that's going to be pretty cool as we look at issue number 90 coming up next. But before then, go ahead now, folks, and drop a like on this video. That will help my channel out immensely. Go ahead and comment down below what you liked about this issue and tell me what you think is going to happen next. And subscribe if you have not. And I will see y'all in the next one.